let's get into why we are here pitching. So if you could go ahead and just drop it in the comments or unmute and answer, what company do you think has the best marketing and why? And you can unmute if you prefer to speak. That's fine as well. Okay, Duolingo, why? I know why, but why? Okay, first thinking, typing. I don't know why. Why Duolingo? Help me. Okay, love it. Their logo and their slogan, right? It's very memorable. Just do it. Very okay. Has anyone seen that? I think everyone has. Has everyone seen the McDonald's CEO video? It's floating around. Do you like your own product? Okay, Meta. Meta. We know the Duo Bird, Anthropic. Love it, love it. I don't know if they have the best, but I definitely resonate with their marketing. Google, universally used. Okay, okay. Awesome. Feel free to drop more ideas in the comments, but here's my top two as of the time I was making this presentation, okay? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Thoughts? Feel free to, one person can just yell out, no, yay, nay. Okay. So I put on here Barbie and Coke. I don't drink soda, but I think Coke has amazing, amazing marketing. And I just remember growing up and trying to find my friends and their names on a Coke bottle or a Coke can. I don't know if anyone grew up in that generation, but it was always exciting. And I think that's the beauty of marketing. That's marketing done right, right? You have a great product, but you also know how to get it to your customers or get it to your target audience. And I put Barbie because maybe I'm not a Barbie girl, but I did go watch Barbie. If anyone remembers the slogan that they had for their trailer, it was, if you like Barbie, you should watch this movie. If you hate Barbie, you should watch this movie. It was so memorable. People were like, what are they talking about? Like, I'm going to go watch that. They had this memorable slogan that stayed and it stuck with people. And that's the beauty of marketing. And now you're like, okay, Z or Sham, whichever you call me, we came here to learn about pitching. But pitching is pretty much marketing. It's marketing your idea, marketing yourself to someone who could potentially invest, either financially, invest with connections, relationship, whatever the case may be. Even your elevator pitch, you can say like, hey, I'm this person and this person. But if you have that memorable slogan and something that they can remember you with and tie you to, you stand out and they're more likely to reach out to you. So that being said, let's get into it. Now I've said like it's very important to be able to pitch, but I want to take a step back because I recognize not everyone might have that idea. Not everyone might have that groundbreaking, life-changing idea. But the truth is we all do. We all do. We just sometimes get stuck when we want to identify value. It's like, I'm thinking of creating a new phone, but you know what? There's already the iPhone, so it's not important. I tell people if Samsung can still have a market, despite Apple being everywhere, your idea can have a market. Now, this is not to say just run with any idea, okay? Just putting that disclaimer out there. So you want to make sure you start with pains and not just ideas, right? It's not just you wake up and you're like, I'm going to change the world today. I'm going to change the world of marketing today, or I'm going to change the movie industry today. You have to focus on something that people actively struggle with. And you have to ensure that you're focused on a specific customer group, which brings us to the second point. Find a target market. Who exactly are you solving for? Your value or said value can only be seen when there is a clearly defined group that this solution can provide ease for. So it's not just everyone. A lot of times we want to start with, I'm going to change the world. How about you start by changing your city? How about you start by changing your college? And you go from there. So find the target market, find their pain points, and then you be able to have mind-blowing, amazing ideas. And then you want to make sure that these people are willing to pay. Validate the willingness to pay, because somebody can say like, it'll be so nice to have another social media platform, but then they wouldn't pay for it. So you want to make sure that it's not just interest. What are you providing? What are you solving for them? So for me to regard something as valuable, you need to be saving me money, you need to be saving me time, you need to be saving me energy. What is that thing that you are saving me? Identify value. That's how you go about identifying value. Very recently, I pitched an idea, and I remember it started off like very silly. No, it wasn't a silly product. It was very formed, fledged product. And I was like, okay, this is already an amazing product. What are we gonna do? And then the more I dug into OSHA regulations, don't ask me why I was reading OSHA regulations, but the more I dug into OSHA regulations, I was like, oh my God, so many people die from like lack of safety in small businesses. I did not know how big a problem that was. And then talking to like small business owners, I'm like, oh, okay, you're actually getting fined $2 million. You know what? If you pay me $50, you could avoid that fine. And that's literally how value comes. And I highly recommend that you observe. The best way to identify value is to observe. A lot of times we're so engrossed in our phones, in everything that life is throwing at us, which is totally understandable. But like, you want to make sure that you give yourself to observation. I highly recommend this. That's how you notice what somebody, your classmate, is struggling with. And then you realize it's not just my classmate. My auntie at home also has the same problem. Okay. Frequency also matters. It's one thing for me to struggle with something once every year. It's another thing for me to struggle with it every day. There's a higher chance I'm going to pay for something that is solving a problem for me daily, as opposed to something that I use only once a year. But that is not to say you still don't have an idea, because there's some people who have subscriptions they only use once in a blue moon. So that still works. And then I put down here, urgency matters. You want to make sure that you are riding the wave, the trends. Something Barbie did really well was like, they came out the exact same weekend as Oppenheimer. And they had this rivalry going, like Barbie, how did they pronounce it? Barbenheimer or something like that. And it was like, it really helped, because like people were like, oh, I just watched this, and then I just watched this one, and I'm gonna tell you which one's better. The company's making their money. It doesn't really matter which one you think is better. So you need to make sure that you're identifying value. I'm just going to drop a quick note that the same applies. So like I said, this is focusing on like pitching, products, ideas, but I also want to call out that the same applies to whether you're pitching yourself. What is that pain point that you can solve for your manager? What is that pain point that you can solve for a company? I noticed that a lot of students that I mentor are more likely to get a response from like a company when they say like, hey, I noticed your website has XYZ issues and I am perfectly suited. I have all the skills, well, maybe not all the skills, but I have 1, 2, 3 skills that would help you solve this problem. So start with pain points, find the target market. So maybe a hiring manager or CEO, someone with the same job title. And then, of course, validating willingness to pay is kind of like subjective when you're pitching yourself, because if it's a real pain point, even if they don't have a role, sometimes they make one. I've seen that happen. It's not impossible. It might not happen all the time, but it does. So we'll move on from identifying value to actually pitching, right? What exactly do you pitch, and what goes on pitch day? Is there anyone who has ever pitched in the room? Just hands up. Awesome. Tran. Okay. Awesome. I see Koichi. Okay. I guess my question would be, what is like, okay, let me rephrase that. What was your first slide? If you've ever pitched, just one of your pitches, like what was your very first slide? You can speak, drop it in the comments, whichever. Okay. They can drop it afterwards, we can check. But I put 5 buckets that I'd recommend if you've ever pitched. I don't know, I think someone has their hand up. Tran, are you trying to say something? I think you're unmuted, but we can't hear anything. Okay, introduction. I see if we introduction. Okay, yeah. Regardless of what order, the reason I call that out is just to say order doesn't matter for the most part. For the most part, okay? Hold that for the most part. But 5 buckets I really want you to take away when you are pitching an idea, when you're pitching yourself, whatever the case may be. These 5 buckets are very important. And they draw from the 10-20-30 principle, which is this guy called Guy. It's very hilarious, but his actual name is Guy. Guy Kawasaki. He used to be like chief evangelist for like Canva and I think Apple and some other top companies. And he's like, hey, your pitch should have 10 slides, or your presentation rather. Your presentation should have 10 slides. It should be able to be delivered in 20 minutes or under. And you should use like at least size 30 font. Like it shouldn't be hard for people to see what you're saying. Now, do we do that all the time? No, but this is just drawing from that principle. You can have longer than 10 slides. Don't feel like this is a rule that you have to religiously follow. So a lot of times, I tell people, whatever you're pitching should fall into these 5 buckets. You should be able to have a clear problem statement. I should be able to say like, okay, Zena is going to change the world of medicine because she's providing a cure to cancer. It should be very clear. And of course, that's not the problem statement, right? That's your solution. But it should be like, oh, 10 million people die from cancer. That's the problem. And we're going to fix that. And my solution is XYZ. So you need to have a clear problem statement. What is that problem that you're solving? And who exactly is it a problem for? I see a lot of people say like, doom scrolling is really bad. And I'm like, yeah, generally we can agree doom scrolling is really bad. But think about this. Doom scrolling affects development for teenagers between ages 13 through 18, and they end up being very closed off adults. Okay, now I'm like, okay, we don't want to put out adults that have issues and are closed off and can't relate and can't be social, because humans are social creatures. Now I can recognize, okay, that's a problem. So start with a clear problem. And when I say start, like I'm saying, when you're thinking of how to formulate your pitch, start building off from your problem. Then ask yourself, what exactly is the solution that I'm presenting to this problem? Be very clear. If you cannot describe your solution in 1 sentence, yeah, you should. I'm not going to say like it's the end of the world, but you should be able to describe your solution in 1 sentence. So, hey, I am building Walgreen Exo, I don't know, Walgreen AI, and we are changing payments for pharmaceutical industries or companies. That's 1 statement. Hey, okay, actually, how are we changing it? We're making payments easier between pharmacists and their patients. That's my solution in 1 sentence. That helps you understand whether you really, really know your solution and whether you can pitch it in a limited amount of time. Then the next thing you want to look into is your business model. Can we actually make money from this? And how do we plan to make money from this if that is the case? So can we make money from this? And how do we plan to make money from this? For this, you need to understand, okay, what are our unit costs? What is, how much will it cost us to make this, if it's a physical solution, or even if it's a digital solution? And then how much are we going to charge? And then what's the profit that we are actually going to get from it? Then we move on to competition and positioning. So it'll be very silly to be asked at a pitch competition and you're like, hey, who's the competition? You're like, nobody. So nobody thought this was a problem up until you, and nobody tried to solve it. It's one thing if your competition tried and they failed, that's completely fine. But a lot of times when people say we have no competition in this space, it's like it's giving you didn't do your research enough. Because if you really did, you recognize that maybe somebody tried and they failed. And that helps me know, like, it's not that you're a bad company. It just means that, hey, this, you understand why this other company failed, and you've probably taken that into account when you're building your solution. So that makes me feel more confident that I can actually invest my money in these people. Positioning is more so, okay, compared to the competition, how do you stand? What are those features that make you stellar? What are those features that differentiate you? What is your moat? Helping me understand that would be really great. And of course, you don't have to follow this in order. These slides can be out of place. There can be different slides representing this, but making sure that your slides tell this story together. And then credibility and momentum. Credibility more so, why are you the best person to solve this? You don't have to be like a developer to be the best person to solve a specific problem, but you need to help me know, like, hey, they're lived experiences that I have. They're people that I'm bringing onto my team. They're people that I'm looking into that makes me perfectly positioned to actually tackle this. I'm like, okay, I can see that. I could see that. And then momentum. Do people actually like what you're building? Do you have any traction? Have you done like user interviews, even if it's with your friends, just saying like, hey, you guys, can you tell me like this pain point? How would you rank it? Blah, blah, blah. Having those like Google Forms really helps. And we'll go through different companies that have actually raised millions of dollars, and we'll see this play out in their slides. So let's get into it. If you can take 1 second to just pause and take a look at all these slides, what would you say connects them? What would you say connects these different slides? Any thoughts? Or what is something that stands out to you when you look at them? Data points, numbers, a stated problem. Okay, same trends response. They all talk about connection. Thank you so much for that. So I had a friend and I showed them this slide and I was like, what is it? And they're like, it all says connect. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. Maybe I'm teaching wrong. So that helped me refine my presentation. So I guess that's an example, practice with people, see what people take from your presentation. But it's actually quite interesting to see that someone would say the same thing. But I believe someone did drop, Chloe, she said, they all state a problem. These all show problems. Connect, the way entrepreneurs connect is broken. Dating is broken. Intimacy is broken. These are companies. This is Series. This is the slide deck that Series used to raise their 3.1 million. And this is from Aria, a company that raised 21 million. Yeah, guys, we need to double up the hustle. So we already talked about the different buckets that you should think about as you're thinking through what you're going to pitch. But I want us to recognize the importance of storytelling in your pitch. Storytelling it helps your audience see themselves in the problem. It helps you convey emotions. It helps you carry people from start to finish, because you could very well start and it's like, and then 5 minutes in, your audience is gone and they missed all of the amazing points that you actually have. I think the craziest story that I've created, and when I when I say storytelling, it's not limited to like having a persona at the start of your pitch, but a lot of times it starts like that, right? I've seen a lot of people create a persona, meet XYZ, meet Gift, meet, I'm trying to say names of people who are not here, meet Maya, for example. And people introduce you to this character and they try to help you recognize that this character is going through one pain or another. That's how it goes. And then, you continue saying like, oh, with our solution, Gift's life, Maya's life is going to be so much better. And that's the beauty of storytelling. I think the craziest story that I created, the craziest persona that I created was for like someone who killed themselves. I don't know. It was kind of dark. And we'll come into like how to, like what kinds of stories you should choose for your different ideas, right? Don't just have really dark stories just to move the audience. It can play against you. So, but you want to make sure that whatever story you're telling, you have the hero framework embedded in it. Every good movie has a really good hero. A lot of people love heroes, and I think this would be a great way to help you remember. You want to highlight the problem. What exactly is the issue here? Like, highlight the problem. Then you want to make sure that you're explaining your value add, so explaining your solution. And then you want to show results. This goes back to credibility, momentum, positioning, show the impact, and then offer a clear call to action. What is that thing that you want from your audience, or what is that thing that you want them to remember you as? And don't worry if you don't remember all of this. We are about to go through it slide by slide, key point by key point, and we'll see how you should actually do it. So remember this slide that we just looked at. The amazing thing that they did coming in straight up was highlighting the problem. Use a lot of times people want to use numbers like 1 in 10 people have this issue, which I highly, highly respect. But I see that what really resonates with people mostly is if they're huge numbers. So like 1 in 10 is great, but like if you have like a groundbreaking number, I tell my students all the time, I'm like, oh, 20 million people suffer from this. Awesome. Make that the center of the slide. Just put 20 million and then put like the issue right underneath. So for example, you see that with ARIA, where it's like 140 million Americans struggle with connection and intimacy. And then they have like more key points that they've like made really big to catch your attention. Like, hey, did you know like 40% of couples, that's concerning. And then you see over here series, it's like, oh wait, people have like 100 followers compared to people who have like 10,000 followers, and showing that people assign value to numbers. So they're very clear. So if, let's say, if you have like a problem statement and it's like 1 in 3 people, 1 in 5 people, there's no problem with that. Here's how I would recommend representing that. Use imagery. So let's say 1 in 7 children die from malaria. I would have stick figures, and one of them would be laying down flat. And it's going to help you. Like the first time you see my slide, you're like, wait, everybody's standing. Why is this one the only one laying down? And then you're like, oh, wait, okay. 1 in 7 children are actually dying as a result of this. Okay, now I can see it. Or different coloring, where everything else has the same color and one thing is like the odd one out. Imagery helps people connect better to your message. Colors and images helps people connect better to your message. So this is showing how companies that have raised are actually starting off with the problem statement, defining clear problem statements. And this goes to what I said about being able to explain your product in 1 sentence. So, hey, introducing Series, a network of AI friends will introduce you to the right people exactly when you need them. Going back to what I just said about having images, now it's easier than ever to create a mock-up on Google Stitch. If you're not familiar, feel free to look it up. What is that idea that you have? Tell it to just design a mock for you. Claude is also great at writing code and creating mocks for you. So you can go ahead and leverage those tools. But I can't overemphasize how important it is to have images in your slides because it helps them see what you're trying to explain to them. Like you're trying to explain how a specific feature works. If I see a picture and I see like, oh, the customer is sending a message to an AI bot, okay, wait, that makes sense to me. I see how that works. Or friends are connecting to each other. That makes sense to me. I see how that works. So having a one-liner is very important. Explain your solution in one sentence. And there's a reason I'm emphasizing this over and over again, because we will actually get the chance to put that into practice. So for the company Hangout, I think it's Hangout in Rodeo, these two companies, you can see how they are calling out their core features. Hey, until we did, nobody actually did 100+ million full tracks. And then you can see their competition listed on the side. Hey, there's Universal, there's Warner, there's Sony Music, but we stand out because we've been able to do this. Not too many text, like it's literally one sentence, but you can see how they're driving home that, and they're putting that emphasis on what they are able to do. For Rodeo, they wanted to specifically call out unique features that they have. So, hey, we have engagement optimization, smart resurfacing, things like that. And you see how those are made bigger. So going back to what Guy Kozaki said about like 30 font size, or at least close to 30, it helps, like, you want to make sure your key points are bigger than the rest of the text that you have. This is one that I see a lot of people stumble when it comes to your numbers. If I'm an investor, I want to understand how you are going to get to profitability. So a lot of times what I do is a clear differentiation. I'm like, hey, here's our costs, here's our revenue, and then here's this place where we surpass the costs and like revenue is actually better. So revenue is not profitability is a joke that I have. Don't just show your revenue and then say like we're profitable. You want to show like, hey, after you take the money we're making from our expenses, we actually are still profitable. We're actually still making money. But here's another way some people do it, right? They these numbers are redacted, but like they have like how many users are coming in, how many sessions they're having, what that is converting to in terms of views. They also have like another slide explaining like, hey, this is how this actually converts to money and we're making money. The other company, Spoon, for them, they have their monthly user growth and then they have like more numbers, but a couple of them are redacted. So you can see like, hey, they're growing compared to like, oh, that's mighty tiny. I hope you guys can see the slides clearly. Please let me know if you can. Okay. And then the reason I put this on here was this company Clicks. I know they have a lot of like text, which is not what I would do. But I really like, so going back to imagery, going back to colors, you can see how they have this graph. Well, it's not a graph, it's like a chart, but it's not really, it's a bar graph. I don't know, bar chart. Help me, people. But they have this clear differentiator between like Tinder, Bumble, and then their product. And they're like, hey, this is like our attraction compared to these other platforms. So even if I did not read all of that text, which I definitely didn't, I clearly saw Tinder, Bumble, and then I saw Clicks and I saw their performance and I'm like, okay, they're actually doing great. I put on here Ditto. I really recommend a good theme. I think it plays a huge part in your storytelling. So one time I did like a Netflix themed presentation and I tried to stick to it. And I think like it helped people relate with like, oh, this is like a movie and she's in like a movie, I think. But I really like their consistency because if you find Ditto and you find their pitch deck, they were very consistent with the Mario theme. And I think it helped pass the message that they are different. They're built for the current generation and they are changing the way dating is going to work in the future. So having a theme and sticking with it. And one thing I'd like to call out, if you look through the different slides that we've been reviewing, you can see so quick rule, don't have more than 2 colors, 3 colors on your slide. It can, except you have a fantastic designer, then like it's not bad. But a lot of times what I've noticed is people have like clashing colors. So I'm seeing green on the first slide, then yellow on the third slide, then blue and black on, like, don't make it too much. A good rule of thumb is let's pick colors that relate, or colors that, it's not accept, colors that complement the colors of our platform, especially if you're demoing like a digital platform or a physical product. Let's pick colors that align with that. I think that would help complement whatever imagery of your platform that you have on. So you want to make sure that you're clearly showing how you stand out. And a lot of times when people do competitive analysis, it's like a table, and then you're like, there's us, and then there's like this company, and this company, and this company, and here's how we're better. I highly recommend letting your creativity flow. You don't need to have like a table and then checks and X's. You can creatively show us like, hey, this is primitive. This is how we're better. And it's very similar to the checks and balances. Like, okay, this is X, this is X, this is X, this is X. We're all checks over here, but it's still creatively done. Traction is very important. I recommend that before you pitch, you at least talk to someone. So this is what I was saying about like talking to your friends and seeing if they can fill out a Google form and including that on your slide. Hey, if you actually look at it, like, there are people who are actually very interested. It does something in the mind where it's like, you're not the only one who thinks this is a problem. There are people who are confirming and affirming that belief that this is an issue. A lot of people do it differently. So this was just to give you different examples of how it can be done. And then I'll leave you with the last, have a memorable call to action. Let me clearly see what you want me to do. Sometimes you can do that verbally. You can do that with your slides. You can say, hey, we're raising some money. Have a clear ask. We're asking you for $10,000 for XYZ reason. Here's what it's going to be put into. Another way to do that is to say like, hey, partner with us. Worst case scenario, like Hangout did, is like, you're going to get at least $1 billion in revenue. We're going to make at least $1 billion in revenue. And then for Meet5, it's like having that, let's combat loneliness, which draws that spirit of camaraderie and like makes people feel like, okay, we're doing this together. Now I've shown you what different people have done in the hopes of helping you just like broaden your mind about how you can approach creating your slides for pitching. But let's talk about what to actually say and how to actually speak during your pitching. So the first I'd start with is audience control. You want to guide the attention of your audience. I'll give a quick call out. If you are pitching with a team, and I know it happens, I highly recommend lining up in order. So if you're pitching first, I don't know if you guys can see my hands, I'm doing a lot of stuff. If you're pitching first, please stand next to the person who's pitching second. Often what I've seen happen is like someone's pitching first, and then the person who's going to take over from them is on the other side. And sometimes they're not slick enough with it. So it's like you're talking and then you're like, oh, wait, I need to hand the mic over to you. So in the case where you're sharing a microphone or like it's limited mics, please make sure you stay in order. Now, if everyone has their mic, of course, you can go as you please, but I think it also helps your audience follow because they're like, okay, this person went first, this person went second, and that helps. Guide attention, call the attention of your audience. Don't scream at them, but you want to make sure you're making eye contact. What I do is a good rule of thumb, if there's an investor, if there's a judge, I want to at least establish eye contact with every single person who's on the judging or investing panel. So I want to like, maybe when I'm talking about the problem, so for example, if you're pitching an issue that is related to women care, I don't know, female menstrual care, for example, and you have a female judge, there can be that tendency to just want to focus your attention on her because you're like, she's going to understand, she's going to relate, but you also have to recognize, hey, the men on your panel, like, they also have sisters, they also have friends who might be facing the exact same problem. So you don't just want to focus on one person that you think can relate to your problem or one person that you see nodding. I know it can be helpful to focus on the person that's giving you the best attention, but you want to control like how much time you're spending looking at different people on your panel. Don't just read from slides. And this is where practice comes in. What are the key points you must absolutely touch on when you're pitching? Learn those, practice them. If I wake you up, you should be able to say it. Don't just turn back and say like, don't just read from slides. And I have a bias with flashcards. And the reason why is because I think you lose your audience while you're doing that. Because you keep looking down, sometimes you're losing the attention of the people who might, like, maybe somebody resonated with a point that you made, but you don't know that. Maybe a judge, like you said something and it struck a judge. You can't tell that it actually struck them because you're looking down and you miss a moment that you can sell in the future. Have a memorable call to action. Hey, with $10,000, with $100,000, we can actually change cancer cure. Oh, join us and together we can help people thrive. Those are examples of like your call to actions. Have a clear ask, one-liner that people will remember even after you're done. Avoid jargon, especially if you're technical or if it's a technical product. Avoid using overly technical terms. So if I'm trying to explain like, oh, we actually use this really cool model that's doing XYZ, I could just say like, hey, we actually have this agent that pulls information just as, and having like related. So if you have to use a technical term, use a relatable term right after. So I'm saying like, hey, we used orchestration and what's a technical thing to explain? Okay, we use model orchestration to ensure that we were able to achieve this result. Just think of, a parent and a child relationship, or a supervisor and a supervisor and I don't know, was under and an employee relation where the supervisor calls for a certain thing and the employee returns it to them, and we had multiple employees returning to the same supervisor. That helps make your technical term relatable and your judges can understand, okay, this is what is going on. So no fluff, make it easy to understand. I know sometimes it feels like if I put all the technical terms and I say how difficult it was to do it, then they'll think it was amazing and they'll be so wowed by it. Sometimes you might lose people if they really don't understand. I've seen really amazing presentations, really amazing products, and they just miss out because the judges couldn't comprehend like why, like how is this solution amazing? Like, and I'm like, if only you knew. So you want to make it simple enough for people to understand. Your audience, your judges, whoever is involved in the process. Learn to read the room. Know when to pause, know when to go faster, know when to, it's very important to, and this goes back to the very first point of avoiding reading. If you're facing down, you can't read the room. You can't tell who's actually engaged and disengaged and what you need to do to re-engage them. So learn to read the room. It's very, very important. Control your delivery. When the timer gets to a minute, I see people try to rush through and it's very hard to hear what they're saying. Like, oh, and the sad part is like your most interesting points, your most important points are often at the end rather. So like your metrics, your finance, how you're making money, it's typically at the end. And I'm like, oh wait, now you're rushing through it. I can't understand why you're a profitable company. I can't understand why you stand out from the competition. And that's why I said at the very start, order is subjective when it comes to creating your pitch slides. You could very well start with Tinder is failing, Bumble is failing, Clicks is here to change that, and showing why you are way better than all of them. And if you think that's the most important thing you want to communicate at the start, and that could show a problem because like these are things that people already recognize. So let your tone vary. Place emphasis on specific things, right? If you're talking about money, be very intentional about calling how you're making $100 million in the last 12 months. I think that's very important. You want to emphasize. For example, if you're pitching a product, maybe you're talking about your problem statement and it's at the very beginning. This is one thing that I've seen a lot because it's the start of your presentation and you want to seem enthusiastic and happy and, you know, ready to deliver. People come in and they're like, did you know that 10,000 children just died from cancer last year? I'm like, that's kind of sad. You should not be so happy to tell me 10,000 kids just died from cancer. Know when to change your tone. Know when to go soft, be mellow. Know when to go high, be happy. Like, hey, this is exactly why we exist. Okay, now like I can see like you're happy. Make sure like every word is landing correctly. Sometimes like you have really great points, you're just not putting the right emphasis on the right places. On the stage, don't just be in a corner or pace around in a bid to move and make the full use of the stage. I see some people pace. It's like, you're not debating. It's like, Mr. President, sir. Like, no. Just take your time. Move intentionally with purpose. Let every gesture count. Like when I'm like, hey, think big. Like, it's like, you know, if I've been doing all of this, when I say think big, like they miss it. Make sure that you're taking space with intention. And the last one that I'll touch on is mistakes. Mistakes happen. Your fault, not your fault. Your coworker who worked on the slide, your friend, your team member who put a typo, who didn't put the right video. Mistakes happen. Calm down. I put this here specifically. Aria, like I mentioned, they raised $21 million, and this was the slide that they used to raise $21 million. And there's a typo. And it's big. It's right in front of you because this is the first sentence you're reading. Imagine if whoever was pitching just was like, oh my God, who did that? You know, that's the first reaction, like, oh, I'm going to still get this person. Don't over apologize. People are like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, a lot of times, if your judges don't catch the mistakes, go along with the flow. Because what really happens is, it took me 2 tries to read this. Well, actually, that's a lie. But a lot of times, it takes like 2 or 3 reads before someone's like, wait, there's a typo here. Because our brain is typically wired to like create words. So it's like, okay, I just read chatbot. Like, there might be an A there, but like I could miss it because like my brain just knows like chatbot. That's the next thing that comes after. So when you start apologizing, when you start panicking, then you're calling my attention to a mistake that I might have missed out on. So if someone catches it, you can, if they do call it out, if they're like, hey, there's a typo, you're like, oh my God, can you imagine that? Yes, okay. And then you keep going. Don't stop because you still have a timer that's working against you. But I saw like a question, so I'll definitely address that, how to respond to mistakes. But just let's move on to answering questions, and we'll stop here and then we'll take questions. So when it comes to answering questions, this is very fun for me. And I notice a lot of times people want to run from this because it's like, what if I don't know the answer to the question they're about to ask me? So like you spend like, I don't know if it's intentionally or unintentionally, but sometimes people spend so much time answering one question, and maybe you have like only 3 minutes to answer one question, like to answer questions totally. And then you spend like 2.5 minutes answering just one question. It's like, you probably lost your audience at like the 1 minute mark, from being honest, except it's like a really technical thing that you want to answer. But my recommendation would be listen first. When you hear like the question come at you, you're like, oh, okay, can you explain your financial model to me? You're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is how it works. Take your time, take your time. Find the question behind the question. When people ask questions, they're really not asking you, a lot of times, they're not asking you what they really need to know, or what they want to know. They're like, okay, can you explain your financial model? But maybe they really want to understand, hey, like, are you guys really, really profitable? Like, how are you able to stay profitable? You want to take time to find the question behind the question. You can even restate the question to them, like, oh, just to be sure I understand what you're saying, you want me to explain our financial model. Is this in respect to profitability? Is this in respect to our customer acquisition? Like, can you help me understand what you're looking for? And then they can clarify and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's actually because of 1, 2, 3, XYZ. And you're like, okay, here's the answer. So don't be in a rush to answer the question. You might know the answer to it, but you might miss out on the hidden question. Because even though have you ever had a moment where you answered a question and the judge is like, okay, but you see from their face, they're not really satisfied. And you're like, I gave you the answer. And then a lot of times what people want to do is like, they want to add on. So they're like, yeah, just to add on to that. And they're like, don't worry. And then you're thrown off because your emotions are like, oh my God, I just messed that up. Just calm down. Breathe. Don't be in a rush to answer. Always bridge your answer back to your pitch. The time to answer your question, the time to like answer questions is the best time to add on. I see it more so as a time to add on. So like, let's say you have 5 minutes to pitch and you have 3 minutes to answer questions. It's kind of like you have 8 minutes to really, really sell your idea, really sell your problem, really sell yourself even. Don't sell yourself. But link your answers back to your problem, your solution, or the value that is, you're providing. So it could look more so like, okay, they ask you a question. Can you help me understand this feature that you mentioned? And then you explain the feature and you're like, okay, so the way this feature works is a customer comes in, they put in a message and they receive an answer, and that's how it works. Or I could say a customer comes in, this is the point we recognize that most people drop off or most people lose money. So we aim to use this feature to keep them in the process, keep them in the pipeline. And then at the end of the day, they go through this process and they've saved $5 for each session. Okay, just as a very fake product. I don't know what product would do that, but you want to make sure that you're tying your answers back to problems, solutions, or value, or attraction even. You could be explaining a feature and you could say like, just chip it in. And this feature is actually loved by 10,000 customers that we've onboarded in the last 12 months. Okay. So it helps me, like, you're pretty much stamping some things that you've already said previously. And yes, don't just say, I don't know. It's honest. It's okay to not know the answer to things, but a lot of times people miss the opportunity to say like, oh, wait, I didn't think about that. But I can definitely follow up. Or if it's a live pitch, it's like, oh, we actually didn't consider that. But now that you mention it, I can see how it could impact 1, 2, 3. And as a team, we'll take that feedback and we'll definitely incorporate it. So it's showing like, oh, you're actually thinking about how this could actually work. And I'm more interested in like putting my money down or even supporting you. And it could be like, you know what? We'd be more than happy to follow up with you after the session, or after this event, to see how we can get that incorporated. So that would be my quick, follow on when it comes to answering questions. That being said, I'm ready to take your questions. We'll take 3 or 4 questions and then we'll move on to an activity. So please, if you've zoned out, if you're tired, drink some water, shake your legs, stand up, don't run around if you must. But after the Q&A session, we have an activity and there will be opportunities to win prizes. So with that being said, I will hand it over. Feel free to just come off mute if you'd like to ask a question, or you can just type it in the QR, in the link that Zinat has been sharing. I think Zinat can read that out for us. Awesome.
Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that and took in, because I was writing, so I hope you were writing too. So the first question is by Orolua Ishola. She asked that, how do you know if they didn't catch the typo?
I would say just train your brain. So there's a high chance, especially like that one, I caught it first read. So there's a chance like, okay, somebody probably caught the typo, but you have to recognize that a lot of times judges will not interrupt your pitch to say like, hey, there's a typo on your slide. It could just be something that you surface jokingly during the question session and be like, oh, if, and that is only if like, you know, the conversation leads in that direction. Maybe you go back on that slide for whatever reason, or you could be scrolling back and you're like, oh my God, a typo, who cut that? And be like, we definitely need the slide cleaned. And you just jokingly like call it out and be like, oh, we definitely need to update the slides. You know, you're like, oh, you know, that's what we'll do first once we make this 10 million, whatever the case may be. So you don't, I think what I'm trying to highlight here is that you don't want to panic and apologize in the midst of your in the midst of your pitch, because it interrupts your flow. A lot of times you're in a flow state, and then when you're apologizing, you're trying to get back into that flow state and you have like only so much time on the clock.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. The next question is, how do you approach pitching with an audience of people with a diverse background? Who should you prioritize in tailoring your pitch?
My good rule of thumb and my good suggestion is that, I know, so this, a 5-year-old, okay, maybe not a 5-year-old, but like, you know how, I don't know, if you're a tech person, they ask you like, how would you explain this concept to your grandma? How would you explain this concept to a 5-year-old? A lot of times it's the same way you would explain to a 5-year-old that you would explain to your grandma. And the reason they're doing that is like, can you really communicate all the needed information that it's easy for anyone to understand? Sometimes you go for a pitch and you don't really know who your judges are. So you just have to like, just like in terms of like preparing from the start, you want to make sure that anybody can take a look at your slides and understand, which is why we talk about images, colors, because that really helps pass the message across. Like no matter how complicated your feature is, if I see like screens and then like, oh, this is this feature and this is this feature, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But depending on the event you're going to, you most likely will have some information about what they're expecting, some information about like, okay, this is an investor who works in healthcare, so I know to tailor my stuff to show that I'm aligned with healthcare. So if you have prior information, definitely you can tailor your slides, but I would say your slides should be general enough that anywhere you go, if impromptu, I'm like, okay, you have a chance to pitch, like, tell me about your product, I should be able to look at your slides and still understand what you're saying. In terms of who to focus on, like physically during the physical pitch, I recommend a lot of eye contact with your judges. Kind of makes them uncomfortable. And it also makes sure that they focus on what you're saying. Cause like they know you're gonna look at them. So they're like, they can't look away. I'm like, all right, focus on me. So a lot of eye contact with your judges, but also other people in the room, because you don't know who your potential angel investor could be.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question to whoever asked it. The next question is, how do you begin to articulate yourself when you are thrown off by a distraction while pitching?
How do you begin to articulate yourself? Sometimes I'd say pause. It seems like, oh my God, there's all this time that's going on, you know, the clock. But sometimes you just need to pause and be like, You don't need to acknowledge it, but sometimes it's very helpful to say, okay, let's take that again. I think that happened to me recently. I'm like, oh wait, let's actually start that again. Or okay, let's continue now. Or even if it's a distraction that caught your attention on the stage, there's a high chance it caught the attention of your judges. So you'd be like, well, okay, now that everyone's with me, let's get into it again. So being, and this goes back to audience control, right? Remember, you own the stage. The fact that you're on that stage means you deserve a place there. So like, work it. It's fine. So the first would be pause, and the second would be if you really, really think you can continue without it, I would just say, just keep going like nothing happened. The judges will take it into account because in their brain, they're like, oh my God, that happened and it could have disrupted them. But like, they were so good. So it helps.
Thank you. The last one is when crafting the marketing, when do you worry about converting passive or secondary audiences?
When crafting the marketing,
When do you worry about converting passive secondary audiences?
I'm not quite sure what this person is trying to ask.
If you ask the question, could you please come off mute so like we could get a clarification of what you're trying to ask?
Is this like how to display customer acquisition, that you're actually acquiring customers as opposed to just general interest? Help me.
I think somebody called Vtron
I think
has her hands up.
I think their hand has been up. I think that was left there accidentally.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just speak generally to it. When crafting your marketing, I want to believe you're talking about like when crafting your deck, or whatever form, because there's a company that used a Notion document to raise millions of dollars. It's mind blowing. I'm jealous. It was very detailed and it was very cute. Okay, so when crafting your deck or whatever form of presentation, when do you worry? I would say it is not your place to worry in terms of what is on your deck. It's more so in terms of what you're communicating. So we have 100 customers on our wait list and we are ready to go live. And that's why some people have like a timeline, like, hey, there's like this 3-month timeline of like, we're taking these people, we're going live, June 1st. And we believe that by June, July, August, September, we believe that by September, we'll be able to convert 30% of these customers. And of course, don't just like throw a random presentation. A good thing that I have in most of my presentations, I have like maybe my core 10, 11 slides, and then I have like an appendix that is very long, but it's mostly numbers in there. So it's like, hey, here's how I came about to this number. So if someone's like, how are you so confident you're going to convert 30% of these customers? I'm like, well, according to general statistics, we've seen that Bumble has been able to convert, I don't know why I keep using Bumble, but we see Bumble and Tinder have been able to convert like, 20% of customers over a 3-month period. And we've taken a conservative approach. So like, we think we'll be able to convert 10% of them. That gives like justification for your conversion. But I'm not sure, that's a very generic answer. So if you have a more specific question, feel free to drop it. Okay, any other questions? We'll take more and we'll go into the activity.
Yeah, I don't think there's any questions. The last one is pretty similar to the one you just answered. I think you just answered a question. It was about how to tips for a go-to-market part of the pitch, and that will make it engaging for both technical and non-technical judges.
Yeah, okay. I think just going back to if needed, especially in the question and answer session, is where you get to like show off your technical prowess. But if you really need, like, let's say you're pitching like a new formula for a medicine, like you can have like the technical terms and say like, okay, this is like copper sulfate. I don't know. I'm feeling chemistry right now. This is copper sulfate, and then it acts as the catalyst. It acts as this that helps me. Like as a listener understand like, okay, so maybe you have like the technical things up, like, okay, say you're a developer and you're like, okay, we use like an AI model, and then we use this, and then we use that. I can put like a little like box where I'm like, catalyst, element 1 plus element 2 equals amazing websites. And then I'm like, oh, okay, wait, I get front end plus back end equals this. So that could help as well. So having some of those visual assistance could help both the non-technical people understand. Okay, if there are no other questions, we will get into our activity. So thank you all so very much. You guys have been such a wonderful audience, very attentive, participating. Thank you all so very much. Now, I put it to you. In one sentence, can you describe a solution you'd create for a problem?